Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Ann Sadiq. We're thrilled to welcome Ken McGrath, a celebrated percussionist and educator whose career bridges the concert hall, the recording studio, and the classroom. From touring internationally with the Los Angeles Philharmonic to performing on major film scores like Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker and Avatar: The Way of Water, Ken's musical journey is both impressive and inspiring. He's a passionate educator, a mentoring the next generation of musicians at Cal State Fullerton, the Colburn School, and Pasadena City College. It's an honor to have him here to share his experiences and love for the art of percussion. Without further ado, Kenneth McGrath. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Hi.
So just to get us started, you've done a lot in percussion. What initially drew you to percussion, and how did you know that this is what you wanted to do and it was the career path for you?
Yeah, so from what I've heard, like my parents have told me this and relatives and whatnot, I guess from a pretty young age, I was a tapper. And so I think there was that element. I don't know how much conscious or unconscious it was, but there was that. And then in my house, there were no musicians. My parents did not play any instruments. I have an older brother. He didn't play an instrument. Nobody in my family was a musician. But between my father and my older brother, there was always music being played. And it had great variety. So like from my dad, he was a fan of jazz and Broadway musicals and things like that. And then, I would sneak into my older brother's room and listen to Motown or listen to Kiss or listen to whatever he was into. So from a really young age, like music was always in the house, but it was always recorded music. And so I just kind of fell in love with it. And it, for me, from a very young age, just like actively sitting down and listening to a record or whatever was an activity I did all the time. The family, we did have a piano in the house. And so like right around age 7, I started piano lessons. And that's where it started. Piano was my first instrument. Mm-hmm. And then when it was time to like pick an instrument for joining the band in the elementary school, initially I wanted to play trombone. I just was really fascinated by the sound of it. But I had pretty bad asthma and allergies as a kid, so I just didn't have a lot of wind. So they said, well, how about drums? And that's kind of what happened. And then it just stuck. Now, as far as I think the second part of the question was, when did I know I wanted to do this as a profession? I always had a passion for it. But as far as realizing, when I wanted to earn a living at it, probably in high school. And at that point, I did not think I was ever going to be good enough to be a performer. I was much more focused on and attracted to like the life of an educator, because I had such great teachers and mentors growing up. It was a really attractive career path to me, like the band directors that I had and whatnot. So I thought going into college, that's what I was going to do.
Now, I'm really glad you mentioned that. Speaking of those mentors that you had growing up, were there any particular ones in mind during your education that have had such a lasting impact on you?
Yeah, so many. I think I've been super fortunate to just have so many influential, knowledgeable, caring teachers and mentors through my training. And I mean, the list is long. How long do we have?
Time in the world.
just kidding. So, yeah, so probably starting with from elementary school, I had a piano teacher. She was actually our next door neighbor, Zita Wayland, and she had a piano studio, and she was just so great. I was not a very good pianist, but she was really patient, and she communicated ideas really well. So she was fantastic, and then my first drum instructor, Louis DiMarino, was also kind of the same way. Just got me on really good footing, gave me a really good foundation for how to play and whatnot. And then after that, it's just, it was just a steady stream of wonderful mentors and educators. My middle school band director, Marty Baum, was amazing. My high school band director, Mike Rubino. Both of those gentlemen were so influential. Part of it, too, was I was very fortunate. I'm not originally from California. I'm originally from Kansas, but the family moved to the San Jose area when I was pretty young. The town is Morgan Hill. I don't know if you know Northern California. Anyway, Morgan Hill had a very strong music program. So I just kind of, that was the thing to do. And between all these different teachers in Morgan Hill and the schools, it just was a good fit for really advancing your playing. And then farther along in high school, then I started studying with a gentleman, Galen Lemon, who was the longtime professor at San Jose State and also a member of the San Jose Symphony. I mean, he played all over Northern California. He was really one of the top players in Northern California. And I studied with him in high school, and he was hugely influential. And then for college, I had really two instructors. So I wound up going to UCLA for my undergrad work. And the percussion instructor there at the time was Mitchell Peters. And he was the principal timpanist of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. He was a huge influence on me, not only on how to play, but just how to conduct yourself, how to be a professional musician. And then for graduate school, I wound up going to the Eastman School in Rochester, New York. And the percussion professor there at the time was John Beck. And again, he was just a phenomenal player, phenomenal career. And you know, his studio at Eastman really is what I base a lot of my, especially my college teaching on. He ran a very special studio where you had students who could, in essence, pursue what they were really passionate about. It wasn't about, this is how I play and everybody's going to play like me. It was more an environment of, I'm going to enable you this opportunity to run with what you have a passion for. And I'll guide you and make sure you maybe don't go too far to the left, too far to the right. But like even when I was a student there as a grad student, just for those 2 years, I mean, we had students that, you know, were maybe into concert or orchestral playing. We had students that were really into drum set. We had students that were really into new music, into world music. And just thinking of kind of where everybody wound up from my time there, it's a really broad range of skill sets in the music industry. So Mr. Beck, John Beck, he had a huge influence on me in that regard. So, and I'm leaving out many people. I apologize to anybody who I might have left out. But yeah, they were hugely influential.
That's awesome that you've had such an influence, starting from with your family, having music in the home, and then just all the way throughout your career, having just such a big support system and people who are willing to guide. And yeah, I feel like it's rare to have such an influence in your life all the way throughout. So that's amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that it seems like with every step, there was like somebody new came into the picture. So again, yeah, just very fortunate. Yeah.
And then throughout your career, you've started touring and performing. You've performed across Europe, Asia, and North America. Are there any particular memories that happened on tour? Anything that stands out to you, whether it was a musical experience or a personal experience?
Yeah, so again, I've just been very fortunate to be able to do what I do, but also to travel most of the world playing, you know, and to play in all these great halls around the world. I mean, there's tons of certainly musical highlights. For me, the ability to play in these prestigious halls, like for instance, the ability to play in the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. I mean, that hall acoustically is phenomenal, and it's the home of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, arguably one of the greatest orchestras in the world. So experiences like that, playing in the Concertgebouw, playing in Royal Albert Hall for the Proms Festival in London. There's been a lot of those where, again, I've just been extremely fortunate to just be in the presence of these halls, Carnegie Hall, Symphony Hall in Boston. I mean, the list is
Just goes
long.
on, yeah.
And then, I mean, just great musical memories, whether it was a tour with the Philharmonic, but I've also toured with Pacific Symphony. And that was actually a particularly exciting tour because it was the first one they ever did. Right. So it was fascinating to, like, for instance, the tours that I've been involved with Philharmonic, obviously that's an orchestra that has toured for decades and is such an established arts entity, in the United States and the world. With the Pacific Symphony, that tour, I believe, was in 2006. That was the first time they ever did it. So it was really kind of exciting. It was fresh for everyone.
And for you.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so that was very interesting. But then, I've also toured with San Diego Symphony when they did their China tour, and then some other just loose, kind of more like a freelancer tours. The first kind of big tour I did was actually when I was at Eastman, the Eastman Wind Ensemble, which is considered, basically the premier wind ensemble concert band in the country. While I was a student there, they would tour Japan every other year, and I was fortunate enough to be on one of those Japan tours. And that was exciting because that was really my first taste of kind of like a professional level, how you do it. You go to a new city, you play in different halls. How do you adjust to the different halls, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. Yeah. I hope to be able to travel as much as you have.
It's so and I've been just so fortunate in that regard. So,
with all of the travel and going to so many different countries, just traveling internationally, do you think that it's had an influence on your opinion and understanding of music and collaboration? And if so, how do you think it's influenced it?
Yes, absolutely. It actually goes much deeper than that. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's traveled, it changes you. And so whether it's on a musical level or whatever it is, it expands who you are as a person. And I would say with all of my travels, certainly professionally, but of course I've also traveled as just a layperson. It changes you, it influences you. Specifically musically, I think the thing that all of the travels and tours have driven home is ultimately what a small community it is. Everybody knows everybody. Or if you don't know them directly, I know him because I did this at the thing, and that's always really rewarding to run into colleagues that maybe you knew, or someone who knows a colleague of you, and then all of a sudden this becomes a new colleague. That's always really a lot of fun.
Everyone's connected somehow.
Yeah. So, and especially like the tours in the United States, you would maybe, you play in San Francisco or Chicago or New York, whatever. Inevitably everybody would hook up. Everybody knows one another, and just get caught up in how everybody's doing, and so.
That's awesome. Speaking of networking and working with such awesome people and so many people, you've performed on iconic film scores by John Williams, Hans Zimmer, and Danny Elfman. Can you describe the unique demands and the differences of working on a film soundtrack compared to a concert hall performance?
Sure. So a lot of the skill sets obviously are the same. Ultimately, the foundation is the same. You have to be able to play, you have to think on your feet, you have to be able to get good sounds out of your instrument. Where it starts to maybe divide is, like for instance with, let's say if I have a concert, with an orchestra, or if it's a recital or whatever it is, most of the time you have a lot of time to prepare for it. You know pretty much what is going to be expected. If it's repertoire that you've played a lot, the piece. things like that. With the recording work, oftentimes you're seeing the music as it's being composed. Sometimes we will be able to see the music maybe a day ahead of time. Or if it's there's been a few situations where a composer has written something particularly challenging, and they'll say, hey, you might want to take a look at this, maybe a couple days
Heads
in
up,
advance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most of the time you just see it when you go in. The other difference is you have to change the way that you play. In other words, because recording work is basically you're playing to the microphone. You're not playing to an audience. I'll give you a couple examples. So like in the percussion world, when you play crash cymbals, piatti in a concert hall, you want to get a really gorgeous full sound because you need to fill that space. When you're recording crash cymbals for motion pictures or recording or whatever, the microphone is very close. So in general, you play less. You change the approach of how you actually play the cymbals a little bit. So it's not quite a robust full sound, but it's a little flatter approach, which the microphone loves. So ultimately, when you're doing movie work or recording work or whatever, you want to make sure that it's a style of playing that lends itself to what the microphone is picking up. And then after that, it's a question of what does the composer care for? What does the recording engineer care for? The recording engineer really plays a huge role. And composers, film composers in general, have their recording engineer that they use over and over because they just work well together. And so, you have that to work with. So then oftentimes you'll play something and it's not necessarily anything wrong with your playing, but whatever the concept of sound is for that sound engineer, that composer, that film project, then you have to make the adjustments. And also with film soundtrack playing, there can often be a lot more collaborative. Sometimes a composer has a sound, an idea, but doesn't quite know what they want to use. So oftentimes we can, we'll show up with a bunch of gear, a lot of gear. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of And so, we have a bunch of gear and so we'll let them hear different options and I like that. We'll try that. The recording world is oftentimes can be very fast-paced. You have to think on your feet. You have to be a really good sight reader. You just have to be able to, whatever's put in front of you, just play it down. But again, I'll go back to kind of my opening statement. The foundation for both are basically the same. Good rhythm, good sounds on your instrument. All of that. So.
And with all of your projects in mind, performance halls and recordings, what do you think audiences often misunderstand or maybe overlook about percussionists and your role in the music industry?
Sure. I would say I think we are often the most misunderstood instruments. And it's to the fault of no one. It is. We have so many instruments we have to play. So it's always really rewarding, actually, whether it's a conversation with an audience member who's maybe fascinated by something they saw or heard, or even conversations in the studio with a composer or an orchestrator or whatever. We bring out one of our toys, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is that? So I think one thing that maybe gets lost on a lot of people is how even something that seems as simple as playing a triangle, it actually takes a lot of study. It actually takes a lot of investigation on, again, how to get the best sound, how to play what's appropriate to the musical situation you're presented with, and then mastering that. The technique of triangle even though it has its foundation in, let's say, like just basic drumming, it is unique, and you have to know about it, and you have to really be familiar with the similarities and the differences. On an extreme level, we, in addition to like all the concert percussion instruments, we have to really have a working knowledge of how to play doumbek, how to play frame drum, how to play Afro-Cuban instruments, how to play Brazilian instruments. It would take 5 lifetimes to cover everything. And there are some players around the world, and certainly here in Los Angeles, that just have done incredible work and are in high demand because they are so versatile. Yeah. So I think that answers the question, right?
I think so.
Okay,
I think
all right.
So. You're very
I might have gone
and
off.
There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I think people don't appreciate how much, like you said, like with the triangle, like it's not just a triangle. There's a lot more learning that goes into it, a lot more studying.
Right.
And I do agree that I think people don't realize that you have to do a lot of learning and a lot of studying to be able to play a percussion instrument.
Yeah, and I think also too, because we play melodic instruments, of course. We play xylophone, vibes, and even timpani. Those are pitched, and so I would say for most people, it's easier to grasp those. Whereas a lot of the things that we do are really about sounds, and not necessarily pitch or melodies, harmonies. So I think sometimes that's like, which is understandable. It's unless you're really in that world, it would be hard to understand. Yeah.
And then you've mentioned earlier at the beginning that you had always been drawn to wanting to be an educator and a mentor because of so much of the influence that you've had, and you didn't initially think you were gonna be a percussionist and that you wanted to teach instead.
Yeah.
Now that you've transitioned to a full-time position here at Cal State Fullerton, how has that influenced the goals that you've set for yourself as a professor, and particularly in your involvement with your students, also maybe including some of the experiences that you've had with your own mentors? How has that influenced you?
Sure. So now with this new position, which I'm thrilled. I'm so happy to become assistant professor here. But I've been a lecturer for quite a while, about 12 years. So my role here, even though I've been involved, and of course involved with the students and mentoring them and teaching them and whatnot, with this increased responsibility and role, I know for me personally, it's going to enable me to probably bring a little more of my personality into what I present to the students and what I contribute to the percussion studio, to the School of Music, to the College of the Arts. I'll have much more of a presence because I'll just be here more. So I know that's going to be a change, and kind of hand in hand with the fact that I'm going to have more of a presence now with this new position. I would say the teaching and the mentoring that I do will definitely go a little bit more in depth in regards to just more hands-on involvement with each student that I have contact with. Right now I'm here quite a bit, and I'm obviously fully engaged and that and whatnot, but this will be different. The difference between the lecturer and assistant professor position. So, and then for the other thing is I certainly have some ideas, some thoughts on kind of what direction I would like to see the percussion studio go in, and hopefully some of those will pan out. Some of those will be successful and help really getting a little tongue-tied. Push the School of Music, push the studio into
the next chapter.
Yeah. So.
And I think that's awesome. I think that it's important, not only that you're going to have more physical presence, but now you're bringing your passion, your ideas, especially with, like you mentioned, having that one-on-one time with students and giving them more focus. I think that's not just important in any class with any professor. I think it's super important to just focus on students a little bit more, especially if it's a classroom of like 30 students. It's hard, I'm sure, to give everybody individual attention, but it truly makes a difference to take a few minutes with everybody. And I think that bringing that into the program and then bringing those ideas that are going to help just start something new, or like I said, take it to the next chapter, I think that's going to be super important, not just for the students, but for the school and for you as well. I think it's going to be a learning experience for a lot of people, which is amazing.
Yeah, and you know, it's I was fortunate when I was brought on initially to teach here. Todd Miller used to be the head of brass and percussion, and you know, the percussion tradition here is already phenomenal, and you know, the presence of graduates from here, it's everywhere, whether it be in the education world, the performance world. Yeah, so it's going to be a continuation of that, and then just a little bit more of maybe some of my personality and some things that I would like to see. I'm actually getting back to your point of the one-on-one. You know, because most of my teaching is either directly one-on-one, or it's maybe with a small ensemble, or if I have a class, I think the most students I've ever had in a class is maybe 15 to 20. So it lends itself to that individual attention. And the importance of, and this is a huge component of my teaching philosophy, that everybody's different. You know, everybody learns differently. Everybody's on a different timetable. There's not like this, you know, if you're not at this point, at this age, you know, I just don't believe in that. Some do. Some very much feel that if you're not checking all the boxes at such and such time, then, you know, I feel like, and this kind of gets back to what Mr. Beck did at Eastman, you know, giving space to the students so that they can pursue, you know, a bit on their own timetable, in their own interests, and ultimately let them do a lot of their own discovering, with you mentoring, of course.
Some guidance.
Yes, shaping,
a
little molding. That's usually when special things happen.
And then speaking of your heart and your personality, you just mentioned that. The last question I have for you today is, what legacy do you hope to leave in the world of percussion and just music at large, or even just here at Cal State Fullerton? What do you hope to leave behind?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or what's one thing you hope to leave behind?
So I would say overall, I hope that in regards specifically to Fullerton, just having a positive influence on those that I have contact with, students, colleagues, you know, what we do as musicians is essentially a collaborative art, or it is for me. I can't speak for everybody. It's a collaborative art, and it's a form of communication. So it's always my hope that I'm creating in some way an environment or a situation or a musical idea that is highly collaborative and communicates something special. So I'm hopeful that if you want to call it legacy or whatever, I'm not real comfortable with that term, but just that people recognize that that was certainly what I was attempting to do. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not, and that ultimately all of this builds communities on the micro and the macro level, and I feel like ultimately that's the most important thing. You know, building those connections, communicating, the dynamic between musicians as they're playing, the dynamic between musicians and audiences, the importance of having a live audience, you know, all of these different dialogues that happen in our world in various ways. For me, it just happens to be music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's a goal that we can all aspire to have. Like you said, whether it's music or outside of music, I think building community can be so important and so beneficial. And I think that it's maybe lacking a little bit in today's world. Has become an every man for himself kind of thing. And I would love to see that influence, whether it's at Cal State Fullerton or outside that, to happen, and just more communities being built through music. I also love music, so I know how important it can be to express emotion, to express a message to somebody. People, like you said, communicate through music through so many different ways, whether there's lyrics or not. It can just be the percussion of it, the drumming can make you feel so much. And I think that that's something that, a lot of people can definitely take a page out of that playbook.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are. I would say there are challenges. I mean, there's always been challenges, but I would say we, at least in our society, the world today, we face some specific challenges right now. And I mean, even something as simple as, and we're all guilty of it, our little devices.
Oh, of course.
We spend so much time on our little devices, and it's easy to lose that sense of connectiveness, that sense of connection with another human. Yeah. So anytime you can, I think, help that, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
And I completely agree with that. Thank you. That concludes today's episode with Kenneth McGrath, a talented percussionist and dedicated educator who has made impactful contributions to both the concert stage and the classroom. His work with top orchestras and major film scores, along with his passion for teaching, continues to inspire the music community. Thanks for watching. I'm Ann Sadek, and this has been In Focus. Thank you so much.